Welcome, everyone. Great afternoon. I don't know what's happened to the weather. We seem to be back in summer again, but it's all good. So we'll open with the prayer, and Rachel, if you can do the honours, thank you very much.
Kia ora, Mr. Chair. Me noi tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, ki mā kina kina ki uta, te mā taratara ki tai. Ehi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he hoka, he hauhu, ti hei, mauri ora.
Thank you, Rachel. I don't believe we have any apologies except potentially the Mayor. Is that correct? I don't see him there.
That's right. That's right, Chairman.
So apologies for the Mayor. Do I have a move and a seconder for that, please?
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Second, John.
Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, all in favour?
Aye.
Yes, carried. Thank you. No deputations, I understand, Rhonda?
There are no deputations.
Okay. Different sounding voice there, Rhonda. Okay, no deputation. And confirmation of the previous minutes. Again, well, I'll move. Do I have a seconder?
Yes, I'll move.
So that, thank you to Chair. Seconded, I believe. That's what I heard anyway.
Yes, Adele.
So how are we going to do this? If I said
In the past, Will has read out the names for you, and
Yes.
you can do that
Yeah,
again.
yeah, I'll happily do that.
Yeah, all right.
Councillor Vucic,
Aye.
Member Robertson,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Court,
Aye.
Councillor Radic,
Yep.
Councillor Smith,
Aye.
Councillor Stratford,
Aye.
Councillor Tepania,
Aye.
Member Edmonds,
Aye.
and Member Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. So that's carried. Thank you. We move to item 5.1, elected members' sensitive expenditure, which is on page 18. Again, do I have a mover, seconder?
I'll move it, John.
Kelly.
Thank you, Bruce here.
Yeah, and Kelly seconded. Thanks, Bruce. So any comments from, I'll take it as read. I think it's straightforward, but I'll just ask for comments around the table. So hands up. I see someone with hands up there. Member Mike, I can't see all the hands. I see Rachel, I see Matty, I see Member Mike. I think he has his hand up at one stage. So let's start with Councillor Smith, and then you, Matty, after that.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. I had raised my hand for the previous item, but I'll raise it later.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Radic.
Yeah, I'm just a bit, I don't know if it's going to offend anybody, but that's life. I'm a bit disappointed that when elected members put in the expenses that, you know, put an expense under $10 or something. I don't go for that. To me, it's just really not on. I mean, so, you know, over my time as an elected member, I've done a lot of travelling on roads of complaints from Te Hapua to Pārenga and the Hokianga. I've never ever put my expenses in, but that's my prerogative. But we need to have a good look at ourselves when we're putting in expenses that are under $10 or even $20. You know, it's not good to me. To me, it is not good anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Radic. Member Mike.
Sorry, my water just went down the wrong way, so if you can't hear me, that's the reason why. So I still don't understand why this is here. I asked at the last meeting why I was here, and we got a comment that the Auditor General said it should be, and that it was best practice. Excuse me. So you will recall I asked for any evidence that either of those statements were true. And I wrote an information request, and to that exact question, you know, can you provide any evidence that is the case? Now, my reply did not contain any evidence, but it contained a long essay on why the world needed to be protected from elected members, and listed a whole lot of legislation that had nothing to do with the question. You know, was there any evidence that the Auditor General recommended, or in this case, said that it was best practice for this report to end up at this? So my answer is still, my question is still, what risks are we addressing, given that there is a long approval process to get any sensitive expenditure paid, or any expenditure paid? Why is this appearing at this committee? Now, I will add that the only sensitive expenditure report that the Auditor General has provided mentions in passing elected members, but it is 99% aimed at sensitive expenditure of senior leadership and employees. So if we are to receive a sensitive expenditure report, then we should be receiving an sensitive expenditure report for senior leadership team, not elected members.
Thank you, Member Mike. I see Will's got his hand up. Before I go there, yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I thought I did raise a action item at one stage that I'll have a discussion with Will and just go over some of those things. I have read what the Auditor General actually did say, and yes, it was senior leadership team. We do have a group that's set up that looks at the sensitive expenditure, if you like, for the CE, but I realise that as you're talking about a broader picture there, and how we look at that, I wouldn't mind that discussion offline, say with the CE and Will or other senior staff. But I noticed, Will, you got your hand up if you wish to answer that, and then I see there's Member Adele got a hand up as well.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair, for your comments and for Member Edmonds' question. We sought to answer the issue that Member Edmonds raises. I mean, I would say someone who's worked in many councils, councillors' expenses are very light here compared to most other places I've worked. They're minimal. Staff do not seek to make extra work for themselves. We don't seek to write any reports that we don't have to. What we're trying to follow is what we perceive to be best practice, and perhaps the Deputy Chair Bruce may have a comment that he wants to make as to what sums up best practice. What I would certainly do for Member Edmonds, I will go back again and go over what we've currently written. I will look again to see if we've offered the wrong advice in this regard. But from what I recall from looking at it last time, that we're trying to give a light touch to something which is, in my view, modest in terms of expenditure.
So thanks, Will. Rather than sending an email, can we just have a meeting with maybe Member Edmonds and anybody else that'd be interested from the
yes, Chair.
Art Committee, then we can go over it. I agree, it is light, but I'm not actually against any public expenditure, to be honest, being shown in the public, and I don't think Mike is. But I noticed, Adele, you got your hand up. So, Member Gardner.
Yes, thank you, John. I'm just sort of wondering whether the bereavement flowers should be attached to this particular account. I don't know. I presume all our flowers come out of this sort of account. I don't know. I'm just wondering. I haven't seen it before, so yeah.
Good question. Will, if you can answer that, or anybody else?
I'd have to take that one offline, the Chair, but I'll get back to the member concerned about this.
Yeah, I think that's only fair. I don't know the details behind that. Thank you.
Perhaps I could close it here to save the follow-up. Just everything that elected members claim is on that list. It is consistent with national policy around about sensitive public expenditure, for which I'm sure Member Edmonds is aware, there's explicit policy for on a national level. We take that as our Bible and we make very minor adjustments to it for our local application. I don't claim for anything. The half dozen exceptions over the last 5 years are intimately dealt with by Deputy Mayor Ann Cord as the chair of the Executive Review Committee. I have to report every time I meet with them about what my expenditures are, so they're very transparent. And I keep a very close close look at SLT's expenditure as well. So this is just a really healthy, ethical process of accounting publicly for publicly claimed money that's claimed against the public account.
Thank you, Sean. And as I said before, under SRC, your details are looked at. But just relating in my experience is that I see you remember sort of hand up again. Just relating my experience in the corporate world that I was in, it was actually made available to the board, all the senior leadership teams expenditure. So we'll have that discussion on that, and that's where the biggest risk is. If you think about it, we the elected members do go through a high process where everything is checked, and so it should be, and it's made publicly available, and so it should be. That's where the risk is not that high. We don't have a credit card, for example, and various things. So I see.
Can I just make a point here, Mr. Chair?
Yep. I see your hand up.
My major point was the point that we are saying that we're even stating quite here, it is the best practice recommendation from Audit New Zealand. I asked for any evidence for that to be the case. It wasn't forthcoming. And now we have another statement that it's a national policy that it is done like this. Okay. So again, I asked both of the people who just said that to please provide me any evidence that either of those statements are true.
So, Member Edmonds, I can vouch for that, and I'll write to you after this meeting. I don't know why you think someone's trying to shaft you, sir.
Hang on, just order. We'll hold that discussion at this level. I already said that we'll have a between Will and whoever else wants to be there from the ARC committee. We'll have that discussion offline. We can actually
Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Radich, and you'll be the last speaker. Thank you.
Good. We need to remember that this is ratepayers' money.
Yep.
And Odell mentioned about beaver and flowers. Well, that's part of it. And and I think this is great because they can have a look and say, well, yeah, this is where this money went to in regard to rural provincial growth meeting, etc., etc. And we, that's our responsibility. It's right.
Thank you. Yep. Thank you, Maddie. And I think we've had a more than ample discussion on this. Thank you, Maddie. I agree. All public expenditures, as I said before, should be made available to the public in some form or another, because it is public money. So that brings it to close this discussion. We have the move and a seconder. I'm going to put this report now to the vote. All in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried. Is anybody against? Can we short circuit someone? Is there anybody against? No. Okay, so that's unanimous. Do I have a move and a seconder for item 5.2? That's the table report on people capability quarterly update, 1st October, 31st December.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mitty. Seconder. I'll second it then. Any comments on this quarterly report here?
Pretty straightforward, Mr. Chairman.
You got Councillor Smith there, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to staff for this report. This has been a good evolving report, and I feel like we've had some good conversation in the past that's getting it to a point that I personally feel good about what we're seeing, the information that we're being provided. Just a piece of feedback. There was nothing that really jumped out at me, but a piece of feedback around the turnover by department. It would be good to see those numbers as a percentage, just so it's relevant. I'm not sure what 10 people from district services means in terms of the percentage of the department turnover. So just giving that piece of feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Tiffany.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair Vucic. Yeah, I liked how from when we first saw this come across, how it sort of evolved. I note on page 24 that the majority of our departing staff members will recommend FNDC as an employer of choice, which is great to see. But I still was somewhat concerned that of those who responded to the question, how would you overall rate the culture at FNDC? Just from what I can see, there was still, like 2 that said somewhat poor. There was a few, neither poor nor great. Quite good was 7, great was 3. I wonder if there was if staff are getting in those exit interviews, like the reason why 2 staff members thought it was somewhat poor. I mean, even if there was just one person, I'd love to know what it was and what we're doing about it, or if it was sort of personality clash. I don't know what the heck it is, because it's just a number there. It left me wanting to know more, to know how we can make every single person who has an exit interview from our organisation say that it was neither poor nor great, or quite good or great. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much more in depth we get from this, but I just noted that there were 2 that said that. If there's any comments around that, or if that's just the way it is, I don't know.
Thank you, Councillor Tiffany. I'm going to ask Jill to give you feedback. Is that okay?
Yep, through you, the chair. So if they haven't given any more information, we don't have it. However, we have just at the end of last year done our New Your Voice survey. So we've got some fantastic information from that we're currently working with the leaders and the teams to look at what areas people want to improve, whether it's, culture, engagement, workload, etc. So we've got some real great data from that with our new Workday Peakon system. So we'll be able to probably report more on engagement going forward, which will be really good.
Awesome, that's really great to hear. Thanks for that.
Yep. I do have a question, but I'm just going to ask if there's any other questions, comments. No. Jill, I do have a question. In terms of other councils, our turnover, is that, and for given size, if you like, what the percentages are, is this about average, below average, or above average?
Yep, so I can just got the stats in front of me, John. It was missing from this report. We can put it in next time. So our annualized turnover for the financial year is 13.2%. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other councils with data that are averaging at 22%. Palmerston North 17, Whakatane 16, Tauranga 17, Tararua 25, Westland 28, Gore 18, Central Otago 33. So if you were looking at those, they're the only ones that responded back to our recent listserv query about turnover. We're obviously tracking below any of those particular councils, but we still want to spend a bit more time on our people. We're going to introduce what we call stay interviews, which is where we actually interview people before anyone leaves and just make sure they're okay and what are their drivers for staying, particularly where in our talent where we definitely don't want to lose those people. So we're doing a lot of work at trying to be proactive in this space rather than waiting for people to leave.
Yeah, thanks, Jill. And given what we're facing at the moment, is with the pandemic, I think, and looking at those comparisons, these Councillor Smith, there are some comparisons. I think it was looking quite good. So thank you, Jill. Any other comments? Member Bruce, sorry, I missed your hand there.
Yeah, no. It was only in relationship to, I can offer a wee bit of help. I won't name the councils, but I did actually just come from another meeting this morning where our turnover.
Sounds like Member Bruce is frozen there, Chair.
Sorry. Yeah, I was wondering if it was me.
Oh, have I frozen, have I? It's not summer down here, Will, but can you hear me okay?
If you can repeat that, please.
Yes, but can you folk hear me, or am I best just to turn my video off, which wouldn't be a bad thing? How's that?
Can
Can you
good.
still hear me, John?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, look, point I was making was I've just come from a meeting where it's 21%. The critical thing here is actually it's been a growing trend in this, but particularly, I'm about to contradict myself. There seems to be a spike at the moment in turnover, and it's partly the conditions that we're under. It's the competitive nature, which is affecting both the local and central government sector, actually, as I understand it. So I guess the critical thing is the sector as a whole is facing challenges, and particularly around remuneration. So, Jill, if we're just going to stay at an annualised rate of 13%, that's actually darn good. So we must be doing something right. So well done.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Member Bruce. You can raise, you can drop your hand now. So I'm going to now put it to the vote.
I put it down, mate. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, John.
And now I'm going to put it to the vote.
Chair Vucic.
Yep.
Member Robertson.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Court.
Aye.
Councillor Radic.
Yep.
Councillor Radic. Councillor Smith.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Tepania.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Aye.
Member Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's unanimous again. Item 5.3 on page 26. And this is the receive the report, the risk progress report and program of externally funded projects. Do I have a mover seconder, please?
Happy to move.
Okay, that sounded like Councillor Tiffany seconding, and it was Councillor Smith, was it? Moved it. Thank you.
It wasn't, but it can be.
I missed all of them. All right, whoever it was. Comments on the report? I'm going to.
I want to Chair, if you would allow, if you'd allow the staff to make a short contribution.
I was just going to do that. I was just going to ask Tanya, because it's a relatively long report. I'm going to ask you, Tanya, to give an overview.
Thank you, Councillor Vucic. Through the Chair, this report is an information report to let you know about the risk associated with the program of externally funded shovel-ready projects. So that's funding that we receive from the government to stimulate our economy after the first national COVID-19 lockdown. We've extended this report to report on more than just the externally funded projects that we're leading as a council, and I will direct you to look at groups A, B and C. Those are those groups that we've reported on regularly since the funding, and we've now included all of the projects where there's been external funding. So Group D is the NTA-led projects. They're both completed. And then we have some additional projects that don't sit under either NTA ourselves or FNHL. So that's the community-led project. And we also got some provincial development funding for our animal shelters, which were part of our CAPEX program already. So they have always stayed under the CAPEX program. And then we have the FNHL projects, the 6 projects that are still underway. We've reported on the risks, and then we've specifically looked at the projects that we're delivering and assessed the organisational risk against those programs of funding. Happy to answer any questions because it is a large report.
Yeah, I'm just looking at hands that are up. We have 2. We have Deputy Mayor, and then we have the Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair Vucic. Just a clarification in case I'm reading this wrong. Page 31, and I'm on the written agenda, not the electronic agenda, so my page looks like that. B1, right at the top of the page, it talks about the program steering group, of which I sit on, And it says here that we meet 4 weekly to receive a full brief report on each of the externally funded projects, and that's correct. And to decide key legal and funding arrangements such as ownership of the assets created. I just wondered if there was another group, because we certainly don't have any decision-making authority at that group. And we certainly don't decide on key legal and funding arrangements or ownership of assets created. So I just wondered if I was reading that incorrectly. Thank you.
I can have some staff member to respond, please.
Just before Will commits, it's music to my ears when I hear a deputy mayor talk like that. That governance group is priceless and indispensable to us operators, but the deputy mayor is completely correct. We need the recommendations and advice, and we get plenty of good in those regards, but it is not a decision-making body, so our mistake in the report. And thanks for recognising that, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tanya, for this report. My question is actually around the scope of the report, and I'm very aware that these are only some of the externally funded projects that we have going on within the organisation. And by way of example, we receive funding on a semi-regular basis from the Tourism Infrastructure Fund. So my question is to whether or not the scope of this report is broad enough, or whether there are other areas of risk from externally funded projects that we should be receiving reporting on. Thank you.
Can we have an answer to that, please?
Tanya, would you be able to pick that one up?
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Smith. I'm happy to extend this report at your direction, and we've actually also asked for guidance on how much information you'd like around risk assessment to FNHL. So I would welcome some guidance from the members around how I can make this report more valuable to you.
And perhaps, Chair, in that, I'll let Andy come in first. Andy.
Thank you, Tanya, and I fully accept if elected members wish to extend the scope of this report, but I'd also direct elected members towards the IM business report that has a full section on TIF that does highlight where the direction and everything, all the issues around TIF. So there is opportunity elsewhere to inspect and comment on the TIF funded projects, and elected members will be aware that the IM business report is taken to Infrastructure Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Smith?
It does answer it somewhat. There is a point that I wanted to raise at today's committee meeting. I wasn't entirely sure where the relevance might be, but I'll bring it up now. DIA 3 Waters funding that we currently have a milestone of the 30th of June 2022. I've looked for some comfort as to whether or not we're going to meet that milestone and what the risk looks like if we don't. I haven't as of yet had a response to that question. So I'm just looking for perhaps, Chair, your direction as to whether that would be best reported through here, or whether that's something that we look to address through drinking water resilience. I am really mindful it's a significant chunk of money, and it is a milestone that's fast creeping up on us. So I'm just looking for some assurance that we're going to meet that milestone. Thank you.
I can have, yep, I see. Andy, if you can answer Councillor Smith, and then Matty, I believe your hand was up, and I think there's somebody else as well, but I can't see.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm beginning to sound like a bit of a broken record, but again, all the DIA water resilience funding is reported every month in the IM business report. It has details in there in the narrative plus a table at the end that details exactly where the project stands. I will need to check, Councillor Smith, but I had seen your question regarding expenditure and thought that a reply had been forthcoming, but I need just to go back and double check that. But I think from my comments today, although this is focused on largely the government response to COVID funding, there is full elected member visibility and transparency around the progress of TIF, DIA funding, and wherever we can, progress on externally funded projects. So we are operating in a totally visible and open environment as much as we can, but clearly happy to take further direction.
Okay, so I see a few hands up there. I'll go to Janice. Are you going to respond to this question as well?
I was just going to point Councillor Smith to the table that's actually in the Council Financial Report as well. On page 77 of the agenda, the DIA projects for water are in there as well. And at the end of January, we were looking at nearly 61% in terms of spend against budget. So we also report it in there.
Yeah, Councillor Smith was asking more specifically that any risk, and I appreciate that, given this is what our committee's about in terms of with the full delivery. But again, I'm just picking up what Andy says. We can address that offline if you wish. I have Councillor Radich, and then I have Councillor Stratford.
Yeah, Janice. Janice, can you tell me, in regard to the Oteria Rugby Club, how much do we give them to fundraise, for their funding their project? Do you know?
Through you, Chair, as far as I know, it was fully funded by MB. It wasn't funded by council at all.
Oh, it wasn't, eh? Okay. Yep. No, it's just that they don't have a team this year, so bit of a joke, isn't it? Right.
Councillor Stratford.
Thank you, Councillor Research. Just to clarify for Oteria Rugby Club, they haven't been able to pull together a men's team, but they do still have the youth. They've got the young kids teams, and it's mainly because of the COVID mandate that they haven't been able to pull together a team. I think that you guys have all answered what I was going to ask. I was going to ask, so these, in the last line, as these externally funded projects are completed, the funding risk to council will continue to diminish. Yes, but where do I see where the growth in OPEX is going to come in, Janice? It's probably somewhere in another financial report that I can't remember. But Tanya asked kindly if there was anything else that could be depicted in this report, and I thought, a nice little table, extra box down that table would be really handy. What it might look like 1, 2, and 3 years, the growth in OPEX. Thank you.
Councillor Stratford, are you asking for a response? Looks like Andy's going to respond to it. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Subject to Janice jumping in and correcting me if she needs to, but certainly in the annual plan workshop, when we held the OPEX workshop with elected members, a lot of the OPEX considerations for these projects were put in front of elected members just for their steer around inclusion, and we worked through elected members will recall we worked through a detailed worksheet that identified what the implications were and just getting the steer from elected members. So there has been visibility of those operational costs. They are our best guess at this point in time in terms of the delivery, and of course we can look to revisit those in future annual plan years if they are found to be either too high or too low. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. To answer your question, Councillor Stratford.
Yeah, so I did see them in the last couple of days in a blur of other workshops. I think it would be handy if it is attached as a night, moving forward, that it is embedded in this report for transparency and to, give ratepayers some understanding of what their OPEX is going to be going forward.
Thank you. And I can vouch for that. For example, you'll see on page 31, the Lindvard Park Sports Hub, which is shown in red, has been a high risk, and all through that, right from the full cost of funding for the full cost of development, and also the ongoing, can it clean its face, has been looked at, and I thank Sean for that, going through that detail. And And also, I'm also appreciative of, because if you look at risk, it's about the risks of council achieving its mission and vision. And on that basis, even though this is not so much a risk to council in terms of funds, it's one of the community outcomes. So it's all kosher in that regard. And since that report, as you will note on the following page, there's more work being done. But just picking up on something else, I do have a question, and it relates more for the public that may be listening, and it relates to I want to give assurance that the two things that were raised were the Pahi waterfront development and Orangatani boat ramp, letter to the editor. And so, Sean, you may want to respond that the councillors are fully aware of the risk, and there has been work being done behind the scenes on that as well. If you wish to respond, just to satisfy the public that we are doing our work here.
Just endorse those comments and talk to the transparency of everything that's going on in sensitive projects with elected members as the 10 reps of the 71,000, 10 plus 3 reps of the 71,000 that are out there. So we're always grateful for any questions that come from the public so that we can fill any gaps.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah. So I now am going to put this to the vote. I don't see any other hands up.
Councillor Vucic.
Aye.
Member Robertson.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Court.
Aye.
Councillor Radic.
Yep.
Councillor Smith.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Tipania.
Aye.
Councillor Edmonds.
Aye.
Member Edmonds and Member Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you. Item 5.4 on page 33. I've got a printed copy as well. That the Assurance Risk and Finance Committee received a report March 2022, and that's the risk management report. Do I have a move on a seconder, please?
I'll move it, John. Bruce here.
Thank you, Bruce. Second, I'll
Happy to
second it.
second, Kelly.
I'll go with Councillor Stratford. Tanya, can you comment on this, please? It is a very good report, and it's a lot of substance to it in here. Give some comments, please.
Thank you, Chair Vucic. Following from our risk workshop, and we got some really good feedback from Councillor Stratford, I've reformatted Table 1 of that report. And so Table 1 you'll now see has got what your risk trend is. So the risk trend is stable or increasing or decreasing, and the number of months since that risk trend has changed. And then also a very high level view of risk treatment progress. In April's report, I am going to include the date that the risk came onto the organisational dashboard, because I think that piece of information would help you understand the change to risk trend. This report has 3 risk progress reports attached to it, and all of those are stable, and you have your first 2 risk reports for 2 of the 4 climate change risks. I'm also drawn your attention to the fact that we have procured comply with, which is our legal obligations ecosystem, and that system is being implemented at the moment, and the obligations register is live and available to all staff with single sign-on, so very easy to access from our TK3 page. The affordability risk reference group has been established, and our next step is to have a risk workshop to look at how we break that risk out, similar to the process that we undertook for climate change. And we're still making some progress on business continuity. Thank you.
Thank you, Tanya, and that'll be great. So, for example, breaking up the climate change allows us to be specific and focus on areas that we can make a difference, rather than having a general statement that's very difficult to put scope and performance around. So, Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair Vucic, and thank you, Tanya, for another excellent report. I have two questions, and they're actually directed to the Chief Executive, and they relate to the table one. I'm concerned to see threatening behaviour to our staff from the public is increasing. We heard about that yesterday in the workshop. We've heard of liquor licensing inspectors being threatened, parking wardens being threatened, building inspectors being threatened, animal control officers being threatened. This is an appalling indictment on the society we live in, but I suspect, given the current environment and the significant stress that we're seeing out there in the community, this is on the increase. So I just wanted some governance comfort that this was on your radar and what steps we were taking to protect our staff. The second question I had relates to data governance risks. And I've noticed of late in my Far North District Council inbox a significant amount of phishing emails, which I report. And I'm just wondering what happens to those when we report them. Thank you, Chair.
Sean, if you can answer, give me there, please.
Yeah, look, thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Chair, and I might get comments follow on from Jill on the first question, and from Lisa or perhaps Jamie on the second. The risk to staff is part of the ambience of working for council, and we attend to this through our health and safety framework. It's exacerbated by the frustrations around the mandates. It won't be the only cause, and Jill can talk to that, because SLT regularly meets on the number of incidents that we have in that and other risk areas for health and safety. But at the moment, it is mainly about the public response to the mandates. By accident or good planning, the fact that we're on a hybrid working program where very few people are now in the public but are actually working from all around the district, we've actually mitigated a lot of that risk just through our workforce model. But it's certainly something that concerns us, and it's not in the press, but there was a shooting in Kaikoura yesterday that's nothing to do with council, but it does remind us of just what the level of risk is out there if people lose the plot. So we're hypersensitive to this, and we've got new structures in place around health and safety over the last couple of years that are serving us well. Jill might pick that point up first. Anything you would add, Jill, through the chair?
Nope. Okay. Member Mike, so your hand was up, and then Councillor Smith.
Yep. Thanks, Sean, for the update on the threatening behaviour. I just wonder whether or not, and the answer might be no, but I think we ought to look at it. Is there anything we can do to reduce the numbers? So instead of, I mean, there's the risk mitigation, right? You know, let's protect our staff from the behaviour versus seeking to do things seeking to change the way we do things to reduce the incidence of those behaviour. And that they're on the same line, but they are different actions. I'm just wondering, is anything being done on the attempt to reduce the number of incidences of this behaviour?
Yeah, it's a good way of looking at it, actually, Member Mike, because it's like climate adaptation versus mitigation, isn't it? It's how do you reduce the problem in the first account, and secondly, it's if you can't reduce the problem, how do you reduce the risk of it manifesting itself? So I like the way you framed it. The biggest thing, if I might offer just off the cuff, the biggest thing that any of us can do to reduce the incidents is to just try and keep brand of council healthy between us, because especially elected members are huge influencers on the way the public thinks about the council. I'd hope through these committees that you see that we're generally busting our onion to do everything possible to be the best council that we can be, and it's only the dissatisfied people that pose a threat to us. So we're just constantly working on that, and anything you can do to advocate for our effort is always helpful. I think it's a fair question. If you want more detail, I could go and think about that for a bit. At the moment, we're focused on mitigation, which is everything from improving the barriers between customer-facing service to stop people jumping over counters, through to having security guards on libraries at times when we've got protests coming. These are many and varied and continuous sorts of measures that we exercise to keep the service running with our public, the bulk of our public, but also making it safe for our employees to be at work.
So I see, so I haven't missed, Councillor Smith, that you've got your hand up, but I see also Will and then Darren put their hands up, so they may want to respond to Member Mike, if that's the case.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair Vucic. The Chief Executive's covered a lot of the ground extremely well, but just on the particular point which Member Edmonds raises, and it's a very good point, and different councils tackle this in a different way. Member Mike may very well be aware that Auckland Council have got a proactive campaign where, to protect staff, what they're seeking to do is to run a comms strategy which says, look, the staff who work for Auckland Council, they're part of our whānau, they're one of us. They don't come from another planet, that they are human beings with families and issues and concerns, and they're genuinely, particularly our frontline staff, are trying to do the very best they can. That's been quite a successful campaign. Well, it's early days, but it looks like it's been quite successful. That's being considered by our Health and Safety Committee as a possible tool to mitigate some of the issues which Member Edmonds quite rightly raises, Chair. So that's watch this space as to how we might respond to that.
Thank you. Darren?
Thanks, John, through the chair. Just to support what the Chief Executive was saying and to add a little bit more too. We introduced a strategic compliance framework a number of years ago, and on the back of that also included a compliance response model that really gives our staff situational awareness and lets them understand, or gives them a framework to work through when they're responding to situations. Anything from day-to-day BAU through to that escalation where you find the more aggressive type customers. So that's really important. It lets us as a business escalate and de-escalate as required. And I think just on the back of that, really, really important that I guess the key message for us is that we are not here to put our people in situations of risk and really encourage them not to enter if they're not comfortable.
Thank you, Darren. Right, Councillor Smith, is your question on the same subject? Because if it's not, I just want to make a comment. It's not. So, Member Edmonds, are you happy with those response? I'm going to make a suggestion to Sean.
Yeah, no, I am. I mean, I've got some stories that I will share with. Well, I've got one of these three gentlemen that might be instructive in this respect, but it's not a story that I share here.
All right, thank you, Member Edmonds. Can I make a suggestion to a question, to see Sean? Should this, and maybe the deputy in her role as well, should we actually have a KPI on this? So threatening behaviour is a KPI on the CE, and you may say to me, "Oh, that's not fair." But given the nature of how it actually works, there is several things in there. How you can de-escalate a situation, which takes training. So you don't send a policeman without training out into the field, so to speak. And I'm just wondering if that was one approach, and therefore we can put it out, put a measurement around it, and have the confidence that council has picked it up as a KPI. And then we can see it and have visibility, and we're working towards mitigating however we're going to do it. I know there are people out there who behave badly. It'd be almost impossible to change them, but I'm just wondering if, because there's both sides here, and there's a fair bit of detail under the scenes and all of that. And as a military man, you probably understand what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
I wouldn't resist the curiosity of the board in understanding what we do to mitigate the risk at all. For the next CEO, I'd be a bit shy to throw him under the bus on a KPI, though, and it's just a matter of principle on KPIs that if you don't control the levers and the resources to influence the outcome, then you shouldn't be held accountable for the outcome. It'd be a little bit like holding me responsible for road deaths in the north. There is a lot that I can do, but there are so many external factors to this that involve other agencies that I would surely fail to reduce the road deaths to zero, I suppose. But we're in the hands of governors, and what they want visibility of is what we'll provide. I'm just not sure that a KPI would do the trick. What we do have is metrics that we monitor at the operational level, knowing that there is, out of sight for governors, there's lots that we do with our contractors around health and safety and our social procurement agencies, and what we do to upskill them and reduce risk, and how we deal with our people who are customer facing. It's just like the 140 or so risks that exist on GM's registers. The stuff is below your purview. If you wanted to see it, we could show it to you, but I'd hate to think that the board is going to run personal safety, which is a minute-to-minute concern for me and for SLT. And we have data every month. We count how many of these there are, of course, on bar graphs, and how many other sorts of safety events there are for our workers. So if I can just give some assurance to the board that we monitor the anatomy of risk for our workers very closely. The only question is how much more you need to see.
Yeah, thank you, Sean. This one is high on the risk register. If you look at the risk factor, even mitigated, is quite high. And as Deputy Mayor rightly raised, it's a big concern to us at the board level. I do know that there are things can be done to help staff to be equipped to be in those situations. So me personally, I think it probably ought, because it's an easy measure, it probably ought to be a KPI. That's just my thinking, but maybe that certainly is offline. I'm not expecting that now, and I wouldn't be doing that without discussion with the new CE and the CE leadership team. But it is a risk to us, and having a safe environment is a key thing.
Yep,
So
understood.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Councillor Vucic. And my questions relate to R013 drinking water resilience. So my first question is, there's a statement here that says that irrespective of the volume of water FNDC is consented to take, there is a 20% chance each year that we will not be authorised to take water from the surface water sources for a week or more. That's quite an alarming amount to me, a 20% chance. So I'm just looking firstly for some assurance that we are planning sufficiently for that, acknowledging that will, I assume, increase going forward. My second question, and to use Andy Finch's words at the risk of repeating myself, the beauty of me asking my question in the earlier report is that that's given me time to go away, and now I'm going to come back and ask it again. So after on page 43, it talks about the Crown Three Waters reform funding and the requirements there. On page 77 of this report, it talks about how much of the capital spend we have delivered to date, and that's great. It's great to see that. But I note in here that only 60% of the granting is capital in nature. And when I go back to the IAM's business report, if Andy would like to cast his mind back to the IAM's other infrastructure committee last month, I asked the same question there, because while I saw that the table was there as to what we've delivered and what we haven't, I didn't have assurance that we were going to meet the milestone. So my yes or no question is, are we confident at the moment that we are tracking to meet the required milestones for that funding by the 30th of June 2022? Those are my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Is there any staff member comfortable to answer now?
I'll pass back to Will for the adjudication here. I've just slipped into the seat.
Thanks for that. I think Andy's volunteering for that, Sean. Andy.
I have, since like Councillor Smith, I have taken the opportunity to dig back into the files and see where the response to that question is. It's going to be sent to you, Councillor Smith, today. So it seemed to have just got lost in an email trail. So the question on DIA funding, and I can't remember what was written, to be fair, and I haven't seen it, but it is with the CE's office. No fault on the CE's office that it hasn't been sent, but it is with the CE's office now and will be sent to you, I understand, either today or first thing tomorrow morning.
Mr. Chair, at the risk of stamping my feet, it's a simple yes or no question. Are we geared to meet that milestone by the 30th of June 2022?
My understanding is we are, but I just want to go back and double check the content of that email. If you want me to do that now, I can go and do that.
Let's do it offline because it's going to take time, and I'm not going to halt the meeting at this stage. But just note Councillor Smith's repeated request for an answer to this. Since we are a risk committee, everything works at risk, and so Andy, I'm not expecting to come back and say there's a 100% chance in all this. I'd like actually a risk assessment coming back so we know what we're dealing with. Like if there's a 99.9, how many sigma do you want? Chance of repeating, or there's a 90% chance, and you know, your best assessment on that. I see Glenn, you've shown your picture. Did you want to respond to it? I'll let you respond. Maybe we get an yes or no answer, Councillor Smith.
No, through the chair, not quite yes or no. The reason I think everyone's being a little bit hesitant giving a yes or no answer is because when the program was developed, there was a range of projects that were put forward with some estimated costs next to it, and those projects got essentially signed off by the DIA as approved projects to spend the money on. As the work has developed over time is when we have had the opportunity to say, actually, that estimated cost, we don't need all that money, or in fact it's cost more. And so over this period of time, there's been numerous conversations that's been had with the DIA around adjusting the program, or in fact adjusting the monies that we would spend on each project, because obviously, like yourself, we want to maximise the spend to ensure that the money that we allocated to us, we get it spent. And so those are the conversations that are being had, but we've got to balance that in terms of the approval of the amounts we send it on. So we are very confident that we are going to maximise our spend there. Will we spend dead on 100%? Very unlikely, because they were all estimated monies, but we're certainly going to achieve what we needed to achieve with the maximum amount spent, but it's going to be pretty close to full spend.
Thank you. Councillor Smith, are you happy with that answer? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I don't see any more hands, so I'm going to now.
Chair, excuse me, Chair. Councillor Courts put in the chat that she would like an answer to the second question, which she asked about phishing. I'm happy to begin that answer, if that's all right, through you.
Yeah, that is. I missed that. Sorry.
And then pass on to Lisa. I think my opening comment would be that that if you were looking at this from the outside in, you would think, my goodness, there's been a huge increase in phishing emails. And part of the answer for that is that that Lisa and her team have been deliberately sprinkling phishing emails out there to try and catch us out. And my goodness, this process has been really successful. And going back a few months ago when Lisa started this, I remember saying to Lisa, why are we getting all these phishing emails? She said, well, they're not really phishing emails. They're an attempt to teach as the part of the training package that we've got. But we do get phishing emails. But Lisa, if you could answer directly the question that the Deputy Mayor asks.
Okay, and I have a question too, so you can answer that at the same time. Are these phishing emails to show how well you can construct your phishing emails, or how? And are we going to see a performance score for all the councillors in terms of the response?
Through the chair, yes. So in response to Deputy Mayor Court's question about phishing emails, when you report an email, it sends the data through to Microsoft, which uses AI, which is artificial intelligence, to learn about the data in the email so that it can try and block it moving forward. So over the last 6-week period, there were 123,000 emails blocked, which is about 56, well, in my report, 56% of all the emails that we receive are identified as spam, phishing and malware. So basically we have a never-ending battle against phishing emails.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to answer my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
So no other hands. I'm going to put it to the vote. So Councillor Busich, yes, and Will, if you can continue.
We'll do Deputy Mayor Court.
Aye.
Councillor Radich. Councillor Radich. Councillor Smith.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Tepania.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Aye.
Member Gardner. And can we just try Councillor Radich again?
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. If we can move to item 5.5 on page 55, and that's the council financial report. Can I have a move in a second, please?
Yeah, John.
Thank you. And second was, sorry, who?
Second.
Councillor Smith. Thank you. Janice, do you want to give an overview on maybe some of the things when we went through the pre-meeting that stand out, or anything else you want to comment on, and then we'll ask feedback from members.
Yep. So through you, Chair. This is a pretty standard report. There's nothing really that different from the report that we put to the last staff committee. We're still showing income is ahead of budget by around 3.6 million. The same reasons still apply. We have had funding transfer from 2021 into 21-22, so that's showing us additional income, and we are continuing to get increased income around building consents and resource consents due to the amount of applications that are flowing through at the moment. Expenditure is currently down by about 2.1 million. There are two significant areas where that is showing. One of them is around professional fees. We have recently passed through the tender panel the process around condition assessments and the work that they're going to be doing in that space. So we're fully expecting those to be spent by the 30th of June. And there's also a significant sum in there for a legal options around the district plan. If we proceed to notification later this year, they may be needed for that. As you're all well aware, capital delivery is proving difficult. There are a number of issues that we've talked about in terms of why it's proving difficult. Then not limited to things like COVID, but we're also seeing supply chain issues and tender box inflation, which is causing some issues in that space. The Treasury Report, we currently have nothing drawn down on the bank facility or the overdraft, and we have $5 million worth of borrowing which will be repaid this month. That will be replaced, so the overall debt level will not drop. We will just cycle the current 5 million out and replace it with new. And that's the highlights.
Thank you, Janice. Questions from everybody? No? Councillor Court.
Thank you, Chair Busich. And I know that we had this back at the risk report. I just wanted to raise the spectre of rates defaults and people that are in trouble because of COVID and all of the other things that are going on out there at the moment. That is putting significant pressure on families and businesses. And the rates demand comes in the mail, and it might be the straw that breaks the camel's back for some. And I know that we have this amazing rates team that will sit there. So if you're feeling the pressure, contact us. But I just felt here, I'm looking at everything seems to be tracking quite well. I don't think it's going to read like that next time I look at it. So I'm just wondering if there's something we could be doing here to be a little bit more proactive and communicating with the public and just saying, we understand that you're hurting right now, or some of you are hurting right now. Reach out to us and have a conversation. Don't put it in your shoebox under the bed. That won't make the problem go away. Thank you.
Would you like me to respond to that, Chair?
Yep. Thank you, Janice. And then we have, Will, you want to do a comment, I believe, and then Councillor Tippania.
So thank you, Councillor Court. That very good point to raise. We're actually taking quite a proactive stance on this. We have looked at the additional penalties that have gone through on the back of the last rates instalment. And we have at least 220 people that have cropped up on that register that weren't there before. So we are proactively trying to call people where we can and have that discussion with them on the basis that we can put payment plans in place, we can look at seasonal plans, we can defer if we need to. So it really is a message of we're here to help. Totally agree with you. Please don't just ignore the letter when it arrives and just put it in the cupboard. If you're having trouble, then we are here to help and we will work with you to get to a plan that works. So that you know, if it is a business, then we try and take that pressure away, so that we're not the straw that breaks the camel's back. And happy to help.
Thank you, Janice. Will.
Thanks. If I could just add to Jan's comments, and first of all, start by thanking Deputy Mayor Court for her generous comments. It's probably one of the more challenging jobs in the council, the work that staff do in this space. If I was to name a team of the year, it would probably be this team. They are absolutely awesome, and it's a point that when I've had discussions with Councillor Stratford that I always stress is it's the team go about their job with an equal dose of professionalism and empathy, and I really would stress that latter point about empathy. But Deputy Mayor Court does raise a really interesting point, and I wonder if Jan and I could have a look to see, is there any emerging best practice about what else we might do in terms of proactivity? So it's a really good point to raise, and we will have a look, Chair Vucic.
Thank you. Councillor Tippania.
Kia ora, thank you. This is just a random question. Fees and charges, so our income from the Hokianga Ferry recorded a surplus with a rise in local tourism across the district during the summer holiday period. I wondered if our ferry is considered public transport, and with the announcement and the half price reduction in public transport fees, that we can expect some income from Waka Kotahi to offset that for our ferry. Is that captured under there or not? I don't know if this is the right place to ask, but I just thought I'd take the opportunity to, because it's on the finance report.
I'll give you that lead and see. Can I ask Andy to give a response to that, please?
Through the chair, good question, Councillor. And I'm not sure if Glenn has any more detail than I do at this point, but my understanding it's regarded as by Waka Kotahi as a road. I know that sounds a little bit suspect, but the alternative route is, as you'll be aware, quite significant and long. So in terms of funding, my understanding is currently they subsidise the loss on the Hokianga ferry to the tune of something like 69%, which is our far rate for the for subsidy from government for roading works. So we already take a large slice of subsidy to operate that ferry.
Thank you, Andy. There is a risk component to this. If there was some money we may be missing out on, so I don't know. So maybe that's something, Andy, you can have a look at if you have time and respond to Councillor Tippania.
Yep, can do.
Or hang on, we have Glenn who might have the answer for us.
Might have a better answer than I do. Yes.
No. I just wanted, just through the chair, to support what Andy said, that we do get Waka Kotahi subsidy on it, but it's not as a public transport mode, right, but it's as a bridge. Surprisingly enough, okay, they treat it like a bridge, and so that we get funding to cover that loss, and they, you know, and they they provide that on the basis that it is a bridge. So it's not it's not referred to as
Just a
public
question,
transport.
we get funding for a loss and we're just reporting that it's in surplus. Does that mean we don't actually pick up that extra funding? I don't know, and just in terms of risk, I haven't actually had any queries from the public yet, but I think as a council we should be prepared when the Prime Minister says that public transport's going to be half price for 3 months, but then we're actually not doing. The public don't think that our Hokianga ferry is a bridge or a road. It's public transport for the public to get from South Hokianga to North Hokianga. Otherwise, you do go around the locally named Andy Long Way is what it's called. So I don't know if we're just prepared for that as a council, if we actually aren't going to be able to get that subsidy and reduce the fee.
Thank you.
Fair point.
All right, any other questions? Given where we are, and I think you did raise it with the cost increase supply chain, and also in fact there's a number of increases that are potentially occurring when we go out for delivery. One of the things is achieving our capital works program, our promise to the ratepayers. Can someone please comment on the risk we're facing there? Thanks, Andy.
Through the chair, I'll have a first stab, and I'm happy for any of my colleagues to jump in. Clearly, the people tuning in today won't be aware that we had a workshop on capital programme yesterday with elected members, and we articulated the risks that are facing the capital programme that are being experienced generally by the community, and any builder who is engaged in construction at the moment will know you can't get gibboard for love or money, and the cost of materials is skyrocketing. Also, clearly, any of our community who going to Pack and Save or New World or Countdown and have the weekly shopping bill knows that it's price inflation is increasing on a weekly basis, and that also applies until recently on petrol and fuel prices. So the cost of doing business and the cost of actually the cost of living is accelerating, and there's an expectation that acceleration will continue through to the end of the year and possibly longer. So what we are seeing in our capital programme is certainly some significant costs coming forward at the tender box when we're going out to suppliers who are quite rightly pricing in the risk of doing business and the cost of doing business. We're also seeing really long delivery times on particularly specialist materials. We're not just sitting there and just accepting that as a fait accompli and hoping it goes away at some point in the future. So we are looking at doing some work with you as elected members around reprioritising and reprofiling the capital programme over 3 years. We are looking at building the capacity of local suppliers, and my team have done a really good job in the past and continue to do so around smaller and medium-sized suppliers getting opportunities to bid for work. And just for example, down at the Waipapa Sports Hub, I'm just reviewing a procurement plan that seeks a significant amount of work through a joint venture of 3 Maori-based companies, which is really positive. We're also looking to pre-order materials to get the materials in before we place contracts wherever possible. That de-risks for suppliers and therefore helps with the costings and also packaging up work. By no means that's going to solve the problem, but rather than just not doing anything, we're trying to pull together a full strategy that will help us deliver a capital programme that's clearly becoming challenging to deliver in 1 year to over a 3-year period.
Thanks, Andy. No other hands up, I see. So I'm going to put it to the vote. I'm a aye.
Deputy Mayor Court, Member Robertson.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Court.
Aye.
Councillor Radic.
Aye.
Councillor Smith.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Tippania.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Aye.
And Member Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Now we'll go item 5.7, and that's the receive the report level of service KPI Q2 performance report. I will move it a second, please.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. Did we do 5.6?
No, we didn't.
Oh, no, we didn't. Sorry. 5.6. I must have jumped ahead and then thought we did it. So 5% on page 79. That makes sense. My text here. Thank you, Councillor Smith. So do I have a move and second to receive the report Far North Holdings Limited half-year financial report?
Happy to move.
Thank you.
I can
Seconder.
second.
Thank you, Councillor Stratford.
Kelly.
Yep. I'll take it as read, but Janice or Will, did you want to comment on this?
I'll let Jan lead off on this if she would like.
Back through you, Chair. I think the report speaks for itself. All the key issues have been identified in the discussion and next steps part of the report. There's nothing further that I want to add.
Thank you. Members.
Councillor Smith, Chair.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking for some clarity as to whether or not there's some good commentary around the variances in this report, and it is an improvement, I think, especially the executive summary. So thank you, Janice, for that. The bullet pointing is really helpful. My question is whether or not we feel confident that we can expect our expected dividend from Far North Holdings back to council at the end of this financial year, based on how they're tracking.
That's Janice, if you can respond, and I notice Member Bruce has got his hand up after that.
Through the chair, there's nothing that I'm hearing at the moment from Far North Holdings that would indicate we won't. With the opening up of the borders, I think we're going to see a reduction in the rent offset that they have been giving to various tenants. I've been reading the news bulletins, and I know that there's some discussion about when cruise ships might come back. So there's nothing at the moment that would indicate they won't meet the revised target that we had from them for this year under their SOI.
Thank you, Janice. Member Bruce.
Yeah, thanks, John. Janice, just background for me. Recommendation B. I'm conscious that also I think there's a meeting next week about the SOI. There's a request here for more information. Can you just refresh a background that, and I guess the supplementary to that, just remind me what the legislative requirements are for the half-year report, whether they're a full gap set of accounts.
And I'll take the second one first. No, they're not a full gap set of accounts.
Sorry, are they meant to be, Janice? No,
they're not.
Okay,
they don't have to be.
Thank you. So I don't have the act in front of me. I couldn't look at it quickly enough. Sorry. Thank you.
In terms of recommendation B, I put in the resolution from April 2020 just for clarity, just to show that Far North Holdings are now meeting the request that was made for more information. Because if you recall, the report used to be a measure against actual to actual for the period from this year to last year. It didn't include any budgetary information or variance detail, so we used to have to dig that out and then put it into the reports ourselves. So they're doing everything that we've asked them to do in their actual detailed report now.
Thank you, Janice. Janice, if you can just refresh my memory, I thought we also were looking at a risk report as well coming through. I'm not expecting it to be right in this report as well. But is that correct? They are going to do risk reporting to us as well?
When we issued the letter of expectation to them in December, we did state that we would be looking for a risk report, but I believe we gave them to June 2023 to determine what that would look like.
Okay.
I would need to go back to the letter of expectation, but it's certainly on the radar that we do expect them to start reporting on risk. Okay,
thank you, Janice. I sort of under the impression it might be due in the next financial year. Thank you, which not quite there yet. Okay, any other questions? None. So I'm going to put it to the vote. So I'm in favour.
Member Robertson.
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Court.
Aye.
Councillor
Aye.
Radich.
Aye.
Councillor Smith.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Tepania.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Aye.
Member Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So now we do move to the item that I was trying to get to in a hurry, item 5.7. And do I have a move a second for that?
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
Happy to second, Kelly.
So there's Smith and Councillor Stratford. Thank you. I'm going to take it as read, but Janice, do you want to highlight anything that bring it to our attention?
I think if I can just jump in, Chair, and say that all that we do in corporate services is to collate the information. It's owned by SLT as a whole, and we welcome members. All of us as SLT members but welcome questions from members on the report.
I'm sure we'll have some questions. I'll bring it. I'll hand it to the members. Questions, please. No questions. Oh, that's interesting. It must be an excellent report there, and there's nothing in there that is causing any concern.
There
Yes,
sorry. Chair, thank you very much. I think we're absorbed in this stuff as governance, as governance over and over and over. There's been a number of reports and a number of conversations, and resource consenting is probably one of the worst in here, but we did that to death yesterday morning in my committee. And yeah, we thank you very much to staff for providing the report and for giving us the narrative at the bottom of those tables, which explains why. So yeah, I guess that's why there's not many questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stratford. You actually answered what I was looking for. We've got a question from Member Bruce, and if Dr. Dean is here, he here? I wouldn't mind a bit of response for public's sake as well. Member Bruce.
Yeah, look, thank you, John and Janice. Or actually, Will, I'm delighted that SLT take ownership of the overall performance, which is superb. I must confess, my head's for various other reasons half in audit preparation work. Are there any of these measures that we have systems that are informal? Are we confident we've got systems here that do deliver accurate information? I'm not suggesting it's not accurate, but I'm thinking about actually meeting the audit test, which is becoming more and more a significant issue around the country in terms of as we need to have good, reliable systems. And I'm just wondering that. The second thing is, as we report, how much of these do we think are influenced by COVID and the impacts on our performance?
Good question. Aaron, you've got your hand up. Are you answering this question, or is Janice going to respond directly to Bruce?
I was putting Will under pressure actually, but that's
Or
fine.
Will.
Oh,
well, you answer.
I'm going to delegate up to my boss. This is Will, please.
I'm quite relaxed. It's not a pressure question. I'm just a wee bit of confidence that our systems are tickety boo. There's a good technical term.
Yeah,
it is.
Well, before you kick off, if I can just check in,
sure.
John, Dean's not with us today. He's not online, so I'm quite happy to try and step into the breach and answer questions if I can on his behalf.
Well, maybe Will can respond to member Bruce, and then you can just give you were there yesterday, and you know what he said, Darren. So you can give a bit of an overview for the public's sake.
Yeah, if I could jump in with the second question first was, has COVID affected the figures? Each member of SLT will say yes, but to an extent, and it depends on the service. So to step into one of Dr. Dean's areas, when you come to public services, one of the most customer services rather. One of the most under pressure teams in the council is in the call centre in Kaikooi. They are a marvellous bunch of women and men that work in there and are constantly under pressure. And I've made the point previously that I think there's more that we can do from a technology end to give them the CRM system that they need. They are because of COVID, more of them are working from home than they normally would, and they need the very best connectivity going, and we're not always able to provide that. So that would be one example of where I think that the service isn't as good as it could be if it weren't for COVID. But I think the upside to that, to answer Bruce's question, the upside of it is that it gives us another kick up the pants to use another technical term, Bruce, to work harder at ensuring that we can get a technology platform that's absolutely fit for purpose, and a ripping, snorting customer relationship management system that's ripe for 2022 and beyond is one of those things that we need to do. So yes, COVID has had an impact, but to differing effects across the SLT's suite of services. I'm unable to, off the top of my head, provide an answer to the first question, which is about are they fit for purpose? But it's a great question, Bruce, and I think between Jan and I, we'll look to bring that back to the SLT table and just ask that question, because it's been a long time since we've looked at these KPI indicators and asked anything like. In fact, since I've been here nearly 3 years, I don't believe we've ever asked that question. And it's one that needs asking, so thank you for that.
Thank you, Member Bruce and Will.
Andy,
Andy's got his hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to expand on Will's comments around the impacts of COVID, and I don't know, Bruce, whether you've got any views from around the country, but I'm aware that within the operational team, they've been working flat out in terms of the services around Three Waters and Roding and district facilities. And as people will be aware that staff are having to self-isolate, and our operational teams that keep the water and wastewater treatment plants going are also staff. They're under the same pressures as anyone else in the community. And the same with the roading guys and the district facility team. So look, those guys have been working flat out and have been real stars in terms of keeping the operation going across the far north. The water's still flowing, the wastewater's still being treated, the roads are still being patched, cemeteries are still operating, swimming pools are still operating. Basically, the services have been maintained at an almost normality, and that's a real big credit to the operational teams. And we're going to try to keep that going as long as possible. I think the one area that I would point out that clearly has been impacted so far by COVID and may well be further impacted is housing for the elderly, and most elected members, or all elected members, will be aware of the sensitivities of face-to-face contact with our elderly tenants. So we've had to be mindful and careful in all interactions with that, but hopefully that will recover as we go forward. Thank you.
Well, look, thank you, Andy. I appreciate there are other people due to talk, but just to respond, yes, it is remarkable how services keep going, and I mean, there's obviously health and safety and other issues around how do we keep everything going, which is superb. In relationship to this report, I think it's going to be important that we do keep a mind around the COVID impact, because I think there's a risk that we all normalise COVID and its impacts, and yet it will potentially still have a significant influence on our achievement of about our performance. So again, coming back to the annual report, it's really important to keep that in mind and to keep a record so that we've got a good ability to report on that. But I'll leave that. Thank you for that, Andy. I do appreciate that, and well done to your team.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Member Bruce. And Councillor Smith, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is a little bit down in the weeds. I was going to put it through the CE office, but I might just put it here and see how we go. So over the summer, we spent a lot of time on the road using public toilets, and it stemmed some questions in my mind as to level of service of our public toilets up here. I noticed that the KPI around public toilets is ensure that public toilets are maintained to an acceptable standard as per contract. So my first question is, what is an acceptable standard and how is that deemed? And obviously it must be in the contract. But then my second question is, I note there haven't been any audits on public toilets in December 21. So coming back to Bruce's COVID question, I'm just wondering if that is impacting on those audits, or if there is a reason why our public toilets weren't audited in December, given that was peak season as well. Thank you.
Through the chair, unless Glenn can answer probably more fully than I'd hazard a guess, I'd like to treat that offline, but I'm happy to ask Glenn if he's got any information he'd like to contribute.
Through the chair, no, I don't actually. I missed that in the report. I was looking through the red highlight ones and getting the right responses and having a green next to it. I actually missed there was no audit. So yeah, I'll need to check that. As an assumption, I would say that they were COVID impacted and couldn't do the audits, but I haven't got the exact answer, so I'll need to go away and find out.
Thank you, Glenn. I think there's two questions there from Councillor Smith. The first one is, what is the level of service that we measure this against? And the second one is about the December audit. So can I just ask you just to pull that together for Councillor Smith, please? Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions. I'll put it to the vote then. So for me, it's an aye.
Member
Aye.
Robertson, Deputy Mayor Court.
Aye.
Aye.
Just give Councillor Radic. Member Smith, so Councillor Smith.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Tippania.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Aye.
Member Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brings us to the last public item, 5.8. Can I move in a second to receive the action sheet, even though it's nil? I think that's what we do.
Move.
Happy to move. I can second, Adele can second.
All right, that was, that was Councillor Smith, I believe, and Adele. And Councillor Smith, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I note in the minutes from our last meeting on page 16, there's a note there in red, Program Darwin Working Group Action Update to be included in the ARF action sheet going forward. So just picking up that obviously hasn't been done this meeting, and if it could be done for the next one, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. You beat me to the punch on that one, because I was going to say, why is it empty? And before we put it to vote, out of today, there was the bit of work we're going to do behind the scenes, which is the sensitive expenditure meeting. There was from Member Bruce a look at, and I think you might have a better look at the accuracy of the data of the quarterly report. I'm paraphrasing that. Can't remember the exact term. So, Will, I think you were going to said you made that promise. You didn't give a date, but you made a promise to come back on the accuracy of that data. That there are good, reliable systems in there that are generating the good data. And I just wonder if the audit is missing on the, and that could be impacted by COVID. That Glenn raised, should we put that on the action sheet as well? Or check? I think you're going to get just check on that, Glenn. I don't know if that's warrants an action sheet item, but just so that we don't lose it.
Thank you, Chair.
I don't think there's anything else. I think I covered most of it. In that case, I'll put this item to the vote, and it's aye from me.
Aye from me.
Deputy Mayor Court.
Aye.
Councillor Radic.
Aye.
Councillor Smith.
Aye.
Councillor Stratford.
Aye.
Councillor Tippania.
Aye.
Member Edmonds.
Aye.
And Member Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, do you want a quick break? We can go into public excluded, but I just wonder if everybody wants a break at all, say 10 minutes or even 5 minutes, if you're happy with what there's a nod there. So we're looking at 1:45. So we'll have that break, but let's do this first bit. So I'll move that we go into publicly excluded for the reasons that are given here.
I'll second that.
Seconder. Thank you, Bruce. All in favour? So aye from me.
Aye from me.
Aye.
Aye.
So that was.
Yeah, I think we can say aye to all of those.
All right, no to all those.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so at 1:45, if you can all you. Well, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for everybody for the meeting today. And now I'm going to hand over to Councillor Stratford to close and karakia.
Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou araki, o e hukaraiti me te aroha me te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, āmene.
Amen. Thank you, everybody. Meeting to a close.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Bruce. Have a good trip. Have a good trip, Bruce, back home.
Member Roberts.